"You're wasting money on those kids when your sister needs a new car," my dad spat. I finally cut them all off. The next day, their sabotage campaign began. I-35M finally stopped being my family's personal ATM after 12 years of financial abuse. The moment my father called my kids a waste of money at our family dinner last month, something inside me shattered like glass. I'd been successful, yes, built a cybersecurity firm from scratch that now protects data for Fortune 500 companies. But that success came with a price tag I never agreed to pay, becoming the financial backbone for an increasingly entitled family who saw me as nothing but dollar signs. What happened after I finally cut them off shocked even me, but I don't regret a single damn thing. Growing up, we were solidly middle class. My parents worked steady jobs, my sister Amy was the family princess, and my brother Kevin was the troubled one who just needed more chances. Our family motto, repeated at every birthday, every holiday, every graduation: family takes care of family. I believed it with every fiber of my being. When my tech startup Sentinel Security began taking off 8 years ago, the requests started small. Dad lost his job during a company restructuring. "Just need help with the mortgage for a couple months, son. You know I'm good for it." Mom called it a temporary setback. 3 months became 6. 6 became permanent. Then came Amy's college tuition, the private university she absolutely had to attend despite her mediocre grades. $42,000 a year. "It's an investment in her future," Mom insisted. Never mind that I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through a state school. Kevin's DUI came next. Legal fees, bail money, then a business opportunity selling custom motorcycles that burned through $76,000 before collapsing. "He just needs someone to believe in him," Dad said, while Kevin nodded solemnly, already planning his next scheme. My wife Rachel watched it all with growing alarm. "They don't even say thank you anymore, Jason," she'd point out after yet another family dinner where my parents casually mentioned bills they expected me to cover. "They act entitled to your money." I brushed her concerns aside for years. "They're family," I'd say, as if that explained everything. The disrespect toward my own family, Rachel and our kids, Jane 8 and Lucas 6, crept in slowly like poison. Amy rolling her eyes when we mentioned the kids' private school. "Must be nice to waste money while mom and dad struggle." This from the woman whose rent I paid every month. Kevin forgetting my children's birthdays while expecting lavish gifts for him. My parents dismissed Lucas's piano recital, but demanded I leave a business meeting when Kevin needed bail money again. The breaking point came on a humid Sunday evening at my parents' house, a house where I'd quietly been making the mortgage payments for years. Jane had been accepted to an elite summer science program. She'd worked so hard on the application, and at 8 years old was already showing the same passion for technology that had driven my success. The program cost $5,000, worth every penny to nurture her brilliant mind. $5,000 for summer camp? My father scoffed, swirling his drink, top-shelf bourbon I'd brought over the week before. "You're wasting money on those kids when your sister needs a new car. They're just going to be a burden anyway." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I saw Rachel's face go pale, saw Jane's shoulders curl inward as she pretended to be absorbed in her dessert. "By the way," Amy added, checking her manicure, another expense I'd covered, "my rent is due tomorrow. Don't forget to transfer it, and I'm going to need an extra 1,000 this month. Coachella tickets." Something inside me broke audibly, like a rubber band snapping after being stretched too far for too long. In that moment, I could hear my own heartbeat, feel blood rushing in my ears. The room narrowed to a tunnel. I stood up slowly, walked to the wall where a family photo hung, one where I'd been paying for the fancy photographer, the matching outfits, the custom frame. I took it down, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it face down on the table. "I'm done," I said quietly. Mom looked up, annoyed at the interruption to Amy's housing crisis. "What are you talking about, Jason? I'm done being your personal bank. As of this moment, you're all financially cut off, all of you." The silence lasted 3 seconds before erupting into laughter. "Sure, sure," Dad chuckled. "Now about Amy's car situation." "I mean it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The mortgage payments, the credit cards, the loans that never get repaid, it stops today." "Don't be ridiculous," Mom snapped. "You know your father didn't mean anything by what he said. Now about Amy's rent." I looked at Rachel, who gave me a small, affirming nod. Then at my children, who looked confused but somehow relieved. 12 years, I said. I've given you over $500,000 in 12 years, and you still treat me and my family like we're nothing. I walked out to the sound of my family laughing, convinced I was bluffing. I wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I sat in my home office with a notepad, calculator, and 12 years of bank statements. My hands trembled as I moved through each year, meticulously documenting every loan, every gift, every bill I'd covered. The numbers stared back at me, black and white evidence of my own exploitation. Mortgage payments, $187,642 Amy's expenses, $226,379, tuition, rent, car, shopping, Kevin's bailouts, $298,755, legal fees, failed businesses, actual bail, parents' credit cards, $94,312 medical expenses, $31,567 vacations I paid for but couldn't attend, $42,900 holidays, birthdays, and emergencies, $68,438 total, $949,993. Nearly $1 million. Money that could have secured my children's college funds, expanded my business years earlier, allowed Rachel to pursue her art without worrying about finances. Money that had disappeared into a black hole of entitlement and ingratitude. I printed the spreadsheet and taped it to the wall of my office, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as proof of what I wouldn't lose again. The next morning, I took systematic action, meeting with my financial advisor to document every loan and gift, canceling all automatic payments to my family members, removing authorized users from credit cards, changing passwords on all accounts. I installed a state-of-the-art security system at our home and office, knowing my family's reaction wouldn't be rational. I consulted our company attorney about potential harassment. I blocked their numbers, filtered their emails to a folder I wouldn't have to see, and locked down social media. That night, Rachel held me while I shook with the immensity of what I'd done. "They're going to hate me," I whispered. "They've been taking advantage of you for years," she said. "You just couldn't see it because you're a good person. They're not." The text started at 7 a.m. the next day, hitting my assistant's phone since mine had blocked them. "Very funny. Transfer my rent money now. Amy, stop this childish behavior and call your mother. She's upset. Dad." By noon, the voicemails began, forwarded by my increasingly uncomfortable assistant. "You think you're something special? You'd be nothing without this family? Nothing." Dad's voice slurred despite the early hour. "My landlord is threatening eviction. Is that what you want? Your sister homeless." Amy, dramatic as always. "Bro, I get it, you're pissed, but I need that investor money by Friday or these guys will literally break my legs." Kevin, who'd apparently started yet another doomed venture. 3 days passed. The messages grew increasingly desperate, then pleading. Mom sent a long email about how Dad's blood pressure had spiked, how he'd been up all night worried about losing the house. How could I do this to the man who had sacrificed everything to raise me? Kevin showed up at my office with a neck brace, claiming he'd been attacked by his investors and needed $50,000 for hospital bills. Security escorted him out when he started shouting about how I was killing my own brother. Amy took a different approach, calling Rachel directly, crying about how she was about to be evicted, how she'd have to live on the streets because her own brother didn't love her enough to help. When Rachel gently suggested Amy get a roommate or a second job, Amy's tears dried up instantly. "You've poisoned him against us," she hissed before hanging up. Then came the final manipulation attempt, a family intervention. I arrived home one evening to find my parents' car in our driveway. Inside our house, Rachel looked uncomfortable on the couch with Amy beside her, Kevin pacing by the fireplace, and my parents sitting solemnly like they were at a funeral. "What is this?" I asked, though I knew exactly what it was. "We're worried about you, son," Dad said, his voice dripping with rehearsed concern. "This behavior isn't like you, cutting off your family, ignoring our calls. We think you might be having some kind of breakdown." Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We've been talking to Dr. Simmons," she said, naming our old family doctor. "He thinks it might be a nervous breakdown from work stress or maybe early onset dementia. The personality changes, the paranoia about money." I almost laughed at the absurdity. They were trying to gaslight me into believing I was mentally ill for setting a boundary. "Let me get this straight," I said, setting my briefcase down. "You think I'm having a mental breakdown because I stopped giving you money?" It's not about the money, Amy cried right on cue. It's about the way you've changed. You've never been selfish before, Kevin added. Never turned your back on family. We've talked it over, Dad said, leaning forward. We want you to see someone, get some help, and in the meantime, your mother and I can manage your finances just temporarily to take that stress off your shoulders. And there it was, the real purpose of their concern, access to my accounts. I walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water, and returned to the living room. You need to leave, all of you, now. See, Amy whispered loudly to Rachel. This irrational anger, this isn't the brother I know. Rachel stood up, her patience visibly exhausted. I've heard enough. Jason is perfectly fine. The only thing that's changed is he's finally seeing how you've used him. Please leave our home. Dad's concerned mask slipped. You can't talk to us that way. We're his parents. And I'm his wife, Rachel replied. The one who's watched him work himself to exhaustion to support all of you, only to be treated like an ATM. Please leave before I call the police for trespassing. They left, but not before Dad whispered to me at the door. You'll regret this, son. Nobody turns their back on family without consequences. It was a threat, plain and simple, and they made good on it. The sabotage campaign began the next day. Dad showed up at my office, making a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. Mom called Rachel's parents, spinning a tale about how I was having a mental breakdown, withholding money for medications and essential care. Amy started a whisper campaign among mutual friends, claiming I was abusing my wife and children, hoarding money while my family starved. Kevin took it further, contacting my clients with vague allegations of fraud, showing up at my children's school claiming an emergency, even filing a false police report claiming I'd threatened him. Their tactics would have worked before. I would have paid them off just to make the drama stop. Not this time. 2 weeks in, reality began hitting them hard. Amy was evicted from her luxury apartment, her BMW repossessed while she screamed at the tow truck driver that her brother would sue them all. Kevin's newest business partners discovered he couldn't deliver the promised investment, leaving him with a split lip and a warning. My parents received a foreclosure notice, the mortgage having gone unpaid for 60 days before my cutoff. They tried increasingly desperate measures. Dad attempted to take out a loan using my information, a clear case of identity theft the police found very interesting. Mom began calling every relative in our extended family, creating an elaborate fiction about my drug addiction and gambling problem. Amy moved back home, posting daily social media martyrdom about having to care for our elderly parents at the expense of her career. Meanwhile, I was healing. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. The constant tension headaches vanished. I attended every one of Jane's school events and Lucas's soccer games without my phone blowing up with family emergencies. Our household finances, suddenly unburdened from supporting 5 additional adults, allowed us to increase retirement savings, build the kids' college funds, and actually take a family vacation, our first in years. At work, without the constant interruptions and drama, I closed 3 major corporate contracts we'd been chasing for months. I started therapy, working through the guilt and manipulation that had defined my family relationships. You've been caught in a classic financial abuse cycle, my therapist explained. Your success became their entitlement. 4 months after the cutoff, my father had a heart attack. Not a fake one like he'd tried earlier, a real medical emergency brought on by years of heavy drinking and stress. My mother called from the hospital, leaving a tearful message. He's asking for you, please, if you ever loved your father. I sent flowers and arranged for the hospital bills to be covered, anonymously. But I didn't go. The old me would have rushed to his bedside, checkbook open. The new me recognized the manipulation even in a crisis. Dad recovered, and the knowledge that I'd paid his medical bills without reestablishing contact infuriated him more than if I'd done nothing at all. It showed I still had resources to help. I was simply choosing not to hand over blank checks anymore. The real confrontation came 6 months after I'd cut them off. I was having lunch with a potential client when my family walked into the restaurant, all 4 of them, clearly not coincidentally. They'd been tracking me, waiting for an opportunity. They looked different. Dad had lost weight, the designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack basics. Mom's hair had grown out, the expensive highlights faded. Amy's handbag was a knockoff of the original I'd bought her the previous Christmas. Kevin sported a fading bruise under one eye. My client noticed my sudden tension. Everything okay? Before I could answer, they surrounded our table. "We need to talk," Dad said, his voice attempting authority but cracking with desperation. "Family business." I stayed seated. "I'm in a meeting, this isn't appropriate." "Appropriate?" Mom hissed. "Is it appropriate to abandon your family after all we've done for you?" The restaurant had gone quiet, other patrons pretending not to watch the unfolding drama. My client looked deeply uncomfortable. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. "Besides take and take until there was nothing left. We raised you," Dad's voice rose. "We sacrificed everything for you. And I repaid that sacrifice 100 times over, but it was never enough." Amy stepped forward, tears strategically forming. "My car got repossessed. I had to move home. My life is ruined because of you." "Your life is exactly what you've earned," I replied. "Just like mine is what I've earned." Kevin, always the volatile one, knocked a water glass off the table. "You think you're better than us? You'd be nothing without this family." I stood up slowly, meeting his glare. "That's where you're wrong. I became something despite this family, not because of it." Dad played his final card, the one that had always worked before. "Family is family. You have a responsibility to us. We're blood." I looked at each of them. These people who shared my DNA but not my values, who claimed love but practiced exploitation. For so long, I'd believed that blood created obligation. Now I saw the truth. My responsibility is to my wife, who supports me without using me. To my children, who I'm teaching that love doesn't come with a price tag. That's my family. You're just relatives. I placed money on the table for our unfinished lunch, apologized to my client, and walked out. They followed me to the parking lot, hurling insults and threats that bounced off my back like rain on a waterproof coat. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror, huddled together, already arguing among themselves about whose fault it was, who would pay for lunch, who would be their next target. For the first time, I felt something unexpected: pity. It's been exactly 1 year since I cut them off. The updates are what you'd expect. My parents lost the house, moving into a small apartment they actually have to work to afford. Amy eventually found a job that matched her qualifications rather than her entitlement: retail sales, not fashion executive. Kevin spent 30 days in jail for attempting to scam an elderly investor, a humbling experience that might actually be the first real consequence he's ever faced. As for me, Sentinel Security was just valued at $40 million. We're opening a second office. Jane's science project won the state competition. Lucas is learning guitar now, alongside piano. Rachel and I are planning a second honeymoon, something we could never do when my family drained every extra penny. Last week, my mother sent an email that somehow made it past my filters. "We're your family," she wrote. "Families forgive. When are you going to stop punishing us?" I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. This wasn't punishment, it was consequence. For the first time in their adult lives, my family was experiencing the natural results of their own choices. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever understand what they lost. Not just my financial support, but the relationship with a son who would have given them anything if they'd just loved him for himself, not his bank account. If they'd shown basic respect to his wife and children, if they'd said, "Thank you," instead of "more." Blood may be thicker than water, but at some point, you have to acknowledge when you're drowning in it. Cutting them off wasn't just about money. It was about saving myself, my marriage, my children from a pattern of exploitation that would never end on its own. They called me heartless. The truth is, I finally found the courage to use my heart for the people who truly deserved it. And I've never been richer.